Sword Tyndall, and I'm back again. And I'm here to discuss a few things. Now, like I said, when people do incomplete reports, like Mr. Dennison Olmsted did, and he didn't put in everybody's testimony as to report, and there was a rush to publish it and everything, there were certain things that were left out. And when that happens, when certain things are left out, it's incorrect after a certain point. A lot of it's incorrect. And scientists can't keep figuring out why they have to change things and why they keep getting stuck. Now, I'm going to discuss the planet Mercury. And I'm going to put, we'll say, my theory forward. Because it doesn't take, you don't have to have an education and you don't have to have a degree in something to know what 2 plus 2 is. Or to be able to take this word, this phrase, and combine these things together. You don't have to be educated. Okay. Mercury, the planet, has millions of craters, all shapes and sizes, shallow and deep. As Mars is covered in oxygen, Mercury's composition is very hard from constant exposure from the sun. The composition on Mercury is like solid metallic rock. It's been converted over a period of time. You got to feel, you know what the heat does to this planet. Okay, Mercury is way closer. If people don't think that it's going to have an effect on the surface or the rocks, they need to go back to school. Like I said, the composition is either solid metallic rock or the planet's almost completely close to being a piece of metal. This is why when the sunlight hits it, the planet gets super hot. Okay, if your planet is made of metal, and I've seen some of the colored pictures that they put out, and why they have the different vibrant colors of the recently pictures that were put out of Mercury, is because that tells me that the sunlight is reflecting off of the metal that is on the planet. But that's my finding. Now, there are sun grazer comets, and when those swing around the sun and fragment, if Mercury is in the right spot, the planet is bombarded with comet fragments. The larger the comet, the more fragments. And you'll see where I'm going with this. And this is just obvious, but you have to look for certain stuff and find it in order to be able to draw these conclusions. But they don't make sense to a lot of people, what I'm saying, and they think I'm stupid and dumb, is because you've never seen something like this happen before. Or you don't know if it has happened. Because everybody just wants to believe that, well, everything's possible, it can happen. Okay, a lot of what happens to fragmenting sun grazer comets has to do with where the planets are located in their rotation around the sun. Okay? And I'll get to this here in a second. There is a rotation pattern where Mercury is out in front, Mars and Venus are almost side by side, and Earth is on the opposite side of the sun, bringing up the rear in rotation behind the first 3 planets. Now, with that being said, we're going to go to this picture. Now, this is a picture of the solar system. I froze it at one point. Okay, you have Mars and Venus. You have Mercury clear out here, and you have Earth almost over on the other side of the sun. Now I'm going to explain this, okay? The planets go in a circular motion like that. They move like that. Okay, this is at one point, but if you back it up, the planets are different. But when it's usually in this particular way, this particular pattern, if a sun grazer comet comes in between the sun and here, and Earth is backed up here a little bit, these planets are backed up a little bit, and Mercury's backed up to here, that sun grazer comet will come around, it will fragment, it will hit the first planet. Then after it hits up that planet, it will pick up debris from that planet, hit Venus, and possibly Mars at the same time, depending upon how wide your debris field is. When a fragmented comet impacts a planet, it's going to pick up more debris, and it's going to grow wider this way. And every planet that gets hit, it's going to get bigger and it's going to get wider. Now, the size of the 1882 comet, if it's the one that fragmented and hit Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and then continued on, and that debris field hit Earth, that would explain why there was so much. Okay. And I looked it up, okay? You have to look this stuff up. Okay, it is possible for a fragmented comet to impact Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and then hit the Earth as it comes around the sun. Earth brings up the rear. So the first three planets, when you have a sun grazer comet, they're like protecting the Earth from massive amounts of debris, because they stand a greater chance of being impacted first because they're out in front. But like I said, it is what it is. Some people ain't going to want to look at it, whatever. Now, why do I believe that? Okay, there are two events that have happened that are somewhat similar. One was in the Bible. Sodom and Gomorrah was supposed to be destroyed by fire and brimstone. And then there was the 1833 meteor shower. And I believe that both those happened from sun grazer comets. But, like I said, those are the only two events that we know of that are documented. Okay, now, when all that debris from the fragmented comet and the three planets, all that debris approaches Earth, okay, it's going to slam the mesosphere. The mesosphere is going to get overloaded. It's going to get overloaded with meteor smoke, and it's going to make shit all funky and weird. It's no different than when you're driving in the fog. You drive in the fog. If there's a little bit there, you can see. If the fog is so damn heavy, you can't see the drive. Sometimes you have to stop because you can't find the lines on the roads. It's similar to that, but it's different. Okay? That's how it affects a human with the fog thing. But meteors can be affected by the meteor smoke. And this is what I've been trying to get across to people. We go by what we let's see, I'll go back. Okay, when this happens, the mesosphere gets overloaded. It won't burn meteors when it gets to a certain point. It won't burn them correctly and evenly. And eventually it'll start letting any kind of rock through without fusion crust or a very thin layer. Now, I know people want to say, well, it's impossible. It's impossible. But is it? Is it impossible? If you go back and you check all this stuff, is it impossible for it to happen? Does anybody here know what happens to the mesosphere when it does have 1 million meteorites in there burning all that smoke? What does it produce? And this is something people have to take into consideration. They don't want to. They don't want to. They want to refuse. Now, these are my findings. No one has to believe. No one has to listen. I wouldn't expect anyone to listen. Nobody listened to the man at NASA. Nobody listened to that man about the O-rings on the Challenger. That man was educated and he was an expert. And because nobody listened to him, all those people died. Now, why do I say that any rocks can get through? I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you something else that I found. Okay? But I don't have the equipment. Nobody wants to listen and even think that any of the stuff that I'm saying is possible. And that could be their downfall down the road. Now, I found this. This piece is heavy, it's magnetic. And if you look it up, it's the basalt, sandstone, and the rocks and the pebbles and stuff. It's the same composition that is on Mars. Why does it look different? Okay, it looks different because it went through the mesosphere and it's been sitting on Earth for a while. But the sandstone and the basalt, I guarantee it. I guarantee it. If somebody tested this, they would know. But what really gets me is I looked up this same stuff on the internet. Okay? I looked up pictures that NASA had taken of the conglomerate and the sandstone and the basalt and whatever else is in it. And the colors and everything. Now, you really can't see much color here. Okay? But when you enlarge it, this picture right here is 10 times. It's been enlarged 10 times. You take a look at the red, the tannish color, the greenish color, the types of rocks and pebbles, and you look at this picture, and you look at the ones online that NASA posts. You'll see the rocks. You'll see the rocks. And I'll show you over here. You'll see the rocks. How they protrude from here. Everything is unevenly. You would think that this would be a piece of earth concrete that somebody poured. But nobody would pour concrete like that for them to walk on stones like that. It's stupid and it just makes no sense at all. Now, why doesn't it have any black fusion crust? Why isn't it really damaged or anything? Well, it's heavy, it's magnetic, but if it came through toward the end of that meteorite shower and that mesosphere was down, like I'm suspecting it was, this is why it's gray but it's like the gray's faded, like a little bit of black on it. But this is a really bizarre piece, because like this was like on the ground, and that was like above the ground. If I'm correct in my findings, the flat part was on the ground, and this rough part was above the ground. But like I said, it is what it is. I'm going to keep on, because I know I am in the right area. Okay, I am checking all this stuff out. I am comparing stuff. I'm actually going back and looking at this stuff. Now, like I said, everybody else is allowed to put their findings out there. I'm putting my findings out there. You don't have to listen. You don't have to believe. But if what I'm saying actually does happen down the road, because we have as many people as we do now, the damage, the destruction, and the death is going to be high. But why check out what I'm saying when we can just let a good percentage of the population die? And, you know, it is kind of frustrating. And I'll admit, I don't have an education. I don't have a degree. But like I said, you don't have to have an education and a degree to know what 2 + 2 is. Or see this stuff. See it exactly as I'm telling it. If you look it up. And in my next video, I've got a sneaky suspicion on what happened to the Space Shuttle Columbia. And I think people are off a little bit on what happened. And I can explain that too, and I will explain that and a few other things that I'm finding out in my next video that I find that people have said, or they believe, or they think it happened this way. It didn't happen that way. And we'll leave this one at that.